Hello everyone, welcome to another series of Mind Map. Today's topic of discussion is emergency provisions. First of all, we will have a look at the introduction of the topic. Then we will discuss about different types of emergencies, comparison between national emergency and president's rule, criticism of emergency provisions, and lastly, practice questions. So first of all, let's have a look at the introduction of the topic. To enable the nation to meet any abnormal situation effectively, the emergency provisions are incorporated in the Constitution. The central government is empowered under Part 18 of the Constitution from Article 352 to 360 to implement emergency. India by nature is a federal country, but in times of emergency, it transfers into a unitary system. The Constitution of India has the ability of being both unitary as well as federal according to the requirements and circumstances. Now let's discuss about different types of emergencies. The Indian Constitution lays out three types of emergencies, which are popularly known as national emergency, president's rule, and financial emergency. First is national emergency. Grounds of declaration. Article 352 mandates that the President can declare a national emergency when the security of India or a part of it is threatened by war or external aggression or armed rebellion. The President can declare a national emergency even before the actual occurrence of war or armed rebellion or external aggression. National emergency when declared on the ground of war or external aggression is known as external emergency. In case of armed rebellion, it is referred to as internal emergency. The term armed rebellion was included by the 44th Amendment. Before this term, it was known as internal disturbance. In 1975, by the 38th Amendment Act, national emergency was made immune from judicial review. However, the 44th Amendment Act deleted this provision and brought emergency under the purview of judicial review. Parliamentary approval and duration. The proclamation of emergency must be approved by both the Houses of Parliament within 1 month from the date of its issue. If Lok Sabha has been dissolved or the dissolution takes place during the period of 1 month without approving the proclamation, then the proclamation survives until 30 days from the first sitting of Lok Sabha after its reconstitution, and the Rajya Sabha has to approve it in the meantime. With the approval of both the Houses of Parliament, the emergency continues for 6 months. It can also be extended for an indefinite period with Parliament's approval every 6 months, added by 44th Amendment Act. Every resolution approving the proclamation of emergency of its continuance is passed by a special majority by both the Houses. Revocation of proclamation. A proclamation of emergency may be revoked by the President at any time by a subsequent proclamation. Such a proclamation does not require parliamentary approval. The emergency must be revoked if the Lok Sabha passes a resolution by a simple majority disapproving of its continuation. Effects of national emergency. The proclamation of emergency has drastic and wide-ranging effect on the political system and could be grouped into 3 categories. Effects on the center-state relations. It enables the center to extend its executive powers. During national emergency, the center is empowered to give executive direction to a state on any matter. The Parliament is empowered to make laws on any subject mentioned in the state list. During emergency, if the Parliament is not in session, then the President can issue ordinance on the state subjects. These executive and legislative powers can also be exercised in states where emergency is not in operation. The President can modify the constitutional distribution of revenues between the center and the states. Effects on the life of the Lok Sabha and State Assembly. While a proclamation of emergency is in operation, the life of the Lok Sabha may be extended beyond the normal term for 1 year at a time. Similarly, the Parliament may extend the normal tenure of a state legislative assembly by 1 year each time during a national emergency. However, this extension cannot continue beyond a period of 6 months after the emergency has ceased to operate. Effects on the fundamental rights. The effects of a national emergency on fundamental rights are described under Article 358 and 359. The suspension of the rights guaranteed by Article 19 is dealt in Article 358, and the suspension of other fundamental rights except Article 20 and 21 is dealt under Article 359. Article 358 states when national emergency is proclaimed, the 6 fundamental rights under Article 19 are automatically suspended. The state is empowered to make any law or initiate executive actions which takes away rights given by Article 19. These laws or executive actions are immune from judicial review. After the emergency is revoked, Article 19 automatically revives. Article 19 can be suspended when the emergency is declared on the grounds of external aggression and not on the grounds of armed rebellion. Article 359. The President is authorized to suspend by order the right to move any court for the enforcement of fundamental rights during national emergency. Thus, remedial measures are suspended and not the fundamental rights. Enforcement of only those fundamental rights is suspended that is specified in the presidential order. The duration of suspension could be until the operation of emergency or for shorter period. After the expiry of the order, the laws which are inconsistent to the specific fundamental right ceases to have effect. The President cannot suspend rights guaranteed by Article 20 and 21 and they remain enforceable even during emergency. Next is President's rule. Article 355 imposes a duty on the center to ensure that the government of every state is carried out in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. If the state fails to do so, then the center takes over the government of the state under Article 356. Grounds of imposition. The President's ruler can be proclaimed under Article 356 on 2 grounds. Article 356 empowers the President to issue a proclamation when a situation has arisen in which the state government cannot be carried on in accordance with the Constitution. As per Article 365, whenever the state fails to comply with or to give effect to any direction from the center, in such a situation, the President's rule can be imposed. Parliamentary approval and duration. Approval of the President's rule within 2 months from the date of its issue by both the Houses of Parliament is mandatory. If Lok Sabha has been dissolved or the dissolution takes place during the period of 2 months without approving the proclamation, then the proclamation survives until 30 days from the first sitting of Lok Sabha after its reconstitution, and the Rajya Sabha has to approve it in the meantime. The President's rule continues for 6 months if it receives the approval of both the Houses of Parliament. It can be extended for a maximum period of 3 years with the approval of Parliament every 6 months. Every resolution approving the proclamation of President's rule or its continuation can be passed by either House of Parliament by a simple majority. Consequences of President's rule are: the President acquires the following extraordinary powers when the President's rule is imposed in a state. He can take up the functions of the state government and powers vested in the governor or any other executive authority in the state. He can declare that the powers of the state legislature are to be exercised by the Parliament. He can take all other necessary steps, including the suspension of the constitutional provisions relating to anybody or authority in the state. Scope of judicial review. The Presidential Proclamation imposing The Presidential Proclamation imposing President's rule is subject to judicial review. Burden lies on the center to prove that relevant material exists to justify the imposition of the President's rule. Financial emergency. Grounds of declaration are: if the situation due to which the financial stability or credit of India or any part of its territory is threatened, then the President is empowered to proclaim financial emergency. Parliamentary approvals and durations. A proclamation declaring financial emergency must be approved by both the Houses of Parliament within 2 months from the date of its issue. If Lok Sabha has been dissolved or the dissolution takes place during the period of 2 months without approving the proclamation, then the proclamation survives until 30 days from the first sitting of Lok Sabha after its reconstitution, and the Rajya Sabha has to approve it in the meantime. Once approved by Parliament, the financial emergency continues indefinitely till it is revoked. Thus, it does not require repeated parliamentary approval for its continuation. Effects of financial emergency are extension of the executive authority of the Union over the financial matters of the states, reduction of salaries and allowances of all or any class of persons serving in the state, reservation of all money bills or other financial bills for the consideration of the President after they are passed by the state legislature. President can issue directions for reduction of salaries of all or any class of persons serving the Union or the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts. Now let's have a look at the comparison between national emergency and President's rule. The relationship of all the states with the center changes in the national emergency, while the relationship between the center and a concerned state change in the President's rule. National emergency, no maximum period is prescribed for its operation, and in case of President's rule, a maximum period of 3 years is prescribed for its operation. National emergency affects the fundamental rights of the citizens, while President's rule does not affect the fundamental rights of the citizens. National emergency is proclaimed on the grounds of war, external aggression, or armed rebellion, and President's rule is imposed when the government of a state cannot be carried on in accordance with the provision of the Constitution. And lastly, special majority is required for national emergency's proclamation or its continuation, and simple majority is required for approval of President's rule or its continuation. Now lastly, let's discuss about the criticism of emergency provisions. The federal character of the Constitution is destroyed and the Union become all-powerful. The powers of the state will entirely be concentrated in the hands of the Union executive. The President will become a dictator and the financial autonomy of the state will be nullified. Fundamental rights will become meaningless, and as a result, the democratic foundation of the Constitution will be destroyed. Now it's time for the practice questions. First of all, note down the prelims question. This question was asked in 2017 exam also. Which of the following are not necessarily the consequences of the proclamation of the President's rule in a state? 1. Dissolution of the State Legislative Assembly. 2. Removal of the Council of Ministers in the state. 3. Dissolution of the local bodies. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 2 only, 1 and 3 only, 2 and 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. You can send the answer of this question in the comment section. Now moving on to the mains question. How is national emergency different from President's rule? Comment. So that's all for today. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching.